Welcome to VeeBee Coding, you can call me B. Today's video, getting started with Power BI. We will go over how to download Power BI Desktop, connecting to multiple data sources, including SQL databases, a web table, and Microsoft Excel. We will form relationships between those data sources, add visuals, format the page, the table and those visuals, and add new columns. To download Power BI Desktop, go to Google and type in download Power BI Desktop, follow the link for Microsoft, scroll down, and hit the download button. For connecting to the different data sources, on the Home tab in Power BI, go to Get Data, and for our first example for connecting to the web, paste in the URL, and on the next page it will give you a list of possible different sources to pull from on that web page. You can click among the table names to verify the data inside. If that is what you want, click the checkbox and hit OK. For importing data via Microsoft Excel, make sure that the column headers are in the first row of your tab. And same as the web page, you can click among the sources, make sure the data that you want is all there. Check the box to the left of the name, hit OK. Connecting to SQL Server, you will need the server name and database name. You can get that from Management Studio. Know if you want to have the data come into the report when you refresh it, or do you want a live connection? That's the difference between your import and direct query. There are two different ways you can get your SQL data in. You can either enter a query, or if you leave that blank, on the next page you can select the names of different tables and views that you can import in their entirety. For relationships among all of the sources that you enter into Power BI, you can click on the third icon down on the left-hand side of the report. The relationships will be among the primary keys of the sources. You can left-click and drag the primary key of one source to the primary key of a second source, and the relationship will be formed. The relationship will have a solid line if it is active. It will have a dotted line if inactive. You can have a one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many relationship. If you have a many-to-many relationship, you may want to revisit the keys that you are using. Otherwise, most of your relationships are likely to be, probably the one-to-many will be your most common one. For formatting and visuals, the options that you have available at the top of the visual section, the tabs will change depending on, are you selected on the background of the report, such as the main page itself, or a table or visual. You can adjust the page width and height. You can add additional visuals. If you have a Power BI license, you can click on the three dots at the end, the ellipse, and import more charts, graphs, filters. For this video, I'll be working with the free version of Power BI Desktop, but professionally, what some of the items that I like to import frequently is the text filter, which is self-explanatory, and the chiclet slicer, which is basically going to allow you to have buttons or tiles that you can select to filter the data. It just looks nice, it's pretty. For adding columns or calculations, Go to the right-hand side of Power BI, hover your mouse over a data source, so the 3-dot ellipse will appear. And then you can add either a new measure or a new column. To add a new measure column, you can also go to the top of your ribbon to transform data again, and it'll bring up a new page with the list of your sources. And on the right-hand side will show all the different transformations that you did to that source, including adding a new column, renaming a column. And the difference between the two is that a measure is calculated when that row is displayed in a table or visual, versus a new column will hold the value for every single row, regardless of if it is being actively used. You can also review the different data sources you have in your report, or if you click on the global permissions, you can also see other sources that you've connected to in other reports in the past. And you can clear out these permissions, you can update them, update security levels. So finally, I want to give a few quick tips. So in Power BI, you can only form relationships between one column. So one column for one source and one column to a second source. If your source has more than one primary key, one solution that I like to do is create a new column, not a new measure, but a new column that combines the primary keys together. And then I will form the relationship on that new column that I like to call tag. Secondly, if you try to filter on data, such as a date column, and the tables and visuals error out, one cause could be the source data has nulls. And before this recording, I tried to prepare an example, but for some reason I could not recreate it. But just in case, I still wanted to give the solution that I used at the time I had the issue, in an old project. I used coalesce. So basically, it's like the if error in Microsoft Excel. So for coalesce, if there is no value, then you just give it a value, a default value. And then when you go to filter your data again, since there will be no nulls, nothing to make a hiccup, it will be happy. You do not need filters to filter your data. And what I mean by that is, take for example, if you had a pie chart, you can click on a slice of the pie and it will filter the data on the page that way. So it's a pretty cool feature. If your data doesn't seem to be displaying correctly, a cause could be Power BI is not treating the data type as you expected it to. So on the left-hand side of Power BI, go down to the second tile down below, and as you click on the different columns in a source, look at the top ribbon and see what is the data type that the Power BI report thinks the column is. And so if it is treating a field as a text, but it should be a number, you can make that change here. And lastly, I suggest making the original data source do the heavy lifting when it comes to calculations and joining between multiple tables, especially if working in SQL Server. Instead of me uploading multiple tables and views within a Power BI and then do my joins there, my calculations there, I would instead write a query in SQL Server, possibly make a view even for the full query that joins everything I want joined, doing the calculations, and even better, have a where clause that narrows down the data to just what I need, and then import just the view into a Power BI. So that way all the heavy lifting is on SQL Server and not your report, and that can help with refresh times. And with that, let's move on to downloading Power BI Desktop. I'm currently in Google. I search Power BI Desktop download, and I'm going to follow the link from Microsoft. Scroll down. I'm going to keep the language on English and click on download. Select the x64. And now, click on that. There we go. So for the select language, I'll keep it as English. Hit next. And hit next again. I'm going to leave the default location just as is. We are now hopping over to Power BI Desktop. When first opening Power BI, I clicked on Blank Report to get to this stage. Let's add our data sources. So first, on the Home tab, going to Get Data, let's go to Web. And for this Power BI, it is going to be on reptiles. So I already have a URL for some leopard gecko information. So I'm going to copy over the URL from Biology Dictionary and hit OK. It is going to bring up different tables or sources on that web page that we can pull from. So those sources may not have names. So you'll see Table 1, Table 2, Table 3. So to get a better understanding of what's in the sources before you import it, left click on the names to get a preview of what is in there. So for my report, I want to grab the table information. And when I was previewing, I see that Table 1 has the kingdom, class, order of leopard geckos. So I'm going to left click the checkbox and hit load. Give it a moment to load into your Power BI. And as you add sources to your report, they will appear on the far right side under the data section. You can also rename the data sources. So this came over as Table 1. So I will rename as Web Gecko. That is our first source. Now let's pull in our Excel file. Same location, get data, Excel workbook. So our Excel workbook had one tab called Requests. Left click on the name, preview the data, make sure it looks good before you import into Power BI. Also, the column headers in my table were all in row 1. So if it looks wrong here, close out this window and make the edits you need to Excel, and then you can come back and try to import it again. Check the box, hit load. So I'm going to rename this to Excel_requests so I can better keep tabs on where data is coming from. Finally, let's go to Get Data, SQL Server. So I need the server name, and let's also enter the database name. And I'll enter it exactly how it appears in Management Studio. So let's go ahead and enter the server name. Enter the database name. So now I can choose the data connectivity mode. Do I want it to be import or direct query? So for this report, there is no need for the data to be in real time. So I am going to use the import method instead of direct query. And I will also know if I want the data to be more up to date, then I can click on the refresh button in the ribbon. Under advanced options, I could, if I wanted to, put in a query. I can say select star from the table called animals within this database. And this is a small table, so I'm not concerned with adding in a where clause to limit the row count coming into our report. But if you had a lot of information, this is where you could do that where, etc. You know, whatever you want to put here. I can also leave this blank and hit OK, and it'll bring up a list of all of the tables and views that I have permission to view in this database. So I'm going to check on the box for animals and load. And just like the others, I will rename the source to say came from SQL_animals. So next, on the left-hand side, let's take a quick look at what is available here. The first tab is the report view. This is where you are right now. The second tab, table view. This is where you can preview the information in these different sources, as opposed to creating a table on this page using one of the visuals, moving the data over. It's just another way. This is also where, if data is not presenting as expected, you can come to this table view, click on one of your sources, and select among the different columns to see how does Power BI interpret the data type, because sometimes it might interpret a field as text when it should be a number. So let's say if the count of our animals was being interpreted as a text, you can come here and you can change the data type from this location, as well as the formatting, how many digits. On the third tab down, or for third tile down for model view, this is where you can view and create relationships among your data sources. Relationships is how the report understands how the different sources talk to one another. So in this case, our web source for Gecko, this is general information about the animal, so this does not have to be connected to anything. Meanwhile, we have our list of current animals on hand in our different locations, and we have a list of requests for those locations wanting more animals to come to their store. So when creating a relationship, you can left click on the primary key of one source, and while holding left click, drag it to the primary key of another source. And while you're in this view, you select the column that the join should be created on. It already defaulted to whatever I had dragged and dropped. It'll show the relationship type, if it'll be one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-many. And you can make this relationship active or inactive. So many-to-many will not be very clean to work with. So this is a hint where perhaps you should be revisiting your data to see, is there a better way to make a relationship? Because this is not going to bring good results. But for this example, I'll just say okay. And the star represents many. So if you see, one to star, that'd be a one-to-many relationship. This is a many-to-many relationship. So clicking back to the report view, I am selecting on table under visuals. And from here, I can start selecting information such as the locations and animals, animal types on hand. Currently, the data looks small in the report. So while I'm clicked in this tab, or clicked in this table, I'm able to click on this format your visual. It is important to be clicked in there because if I click on the background of this report, you'll see that tile is gone from up here. So click, and now for my visual, I can go down to values. Making it a little bigger. So while clicked in this table, I can continue adding more information. And as we're looking at our data, we can see we have some lines that are not lining up. We see Harry's Hogs, we see the creature of leopard gecko from the animals table source, but our table here is showing the creature hognose snake from our request table. So though the request is from that location, it doesn't belong to the original count of leopard gecko. So really our data has two primary keys that we need to make our join on, but Power BI does not allow us to make more than one join among columns. So if I go, so let's see, so if I hover on the relationship, I can see what's joined on right now. If I try to join on the creatures as well and hit save, Power BI will only have one of these relationships active between two specific sources. So I'm just going to delete those. A trick that I like to do is combine the two or more primary keys into one. So under our data, I'm going to create a new column, and I'm going to call this, let's see, our SQL tag. I commonly use tag whenever doing this. So I'm going to say the creature location and I also like to do an underscore to keep them totally separate. Creature and enter. Also go into our Excel requests create new column. This will be our Excel tag. And in this source, instead of calling it the C location or creature location, I had called it the requested by. So I'll do requested by and underscore creature, enter. So going to our table view, I can go to those sources and see what that new tag column looks like. Also going to the other one. Yep, so here's our SQL tag. So now on our model view, I can go to our tag, left click and hold, go to Excel tag. Now we have a one-to-many relationship, which makes sense because in our SQL source, that is meant to be a list of each location with their grand total on hand, joining on the list of requests, and a location could send in multiple requests. So that's why we can have a one-to-many relationship here. And save. So, starting fresh, I can also start editing the page if I wanted to. So selected on the background, I can go to format the page. I can adjust the size of the page. So I'm going to go down to custom. For height, I'll keep it 720 for the width. Actually, I'm fine with the 1280. That should be wide enough. Canvas background. A nice gray. Transparency. Make that darker. And just to do some simple editing, I can go to Insert, Shapes. Expand it across the top. And we can change the color. Make it a little darker. I'm going to place this above our banner at the very top. So I'm going to make the text white. Take away the background. Make this a bit bigger. Oop. I was selected on the side of the filters. There we go. I'm gonna change that again. Much better. So let's start making tables for our grand total on hand, our requests, and then we'll make a third table to combine the two, and I'll show you how to do that momentarily. So let's start by adding in the general information from our web page, or from the web page that we found. And you can rename the columns, or rename how the columns appear in the visual over here by going to this section. So I can say this first column, we will actually call it categories. And for the second column, we will call it details. And while still clicked in this table, we can reformat it by clicking Format Your Visual, column headers, background. I'm going to use the most recent color that we used up above. Make the text white. I can make the header text bigger. If you didn't want the extra white around your table, you can go to this background under General and toggle that off. And let's set that to the side. Let's add in an image for our report, because this is for leopard geckos. And at the bottom of our report, I can rename this tab. And there we go. And we can create multiple tabs, one for each of our animals. So I can either copy this table over, take away the columns, and put a new information if I wanted to keep the same formatting, or I can just click on the table again. Table. Click on the table again. And when you go to, let's say, our animals list from SQL, put in our location, our creature. Let's put in our count, total count, and how many are available for sale. To make it easy, I can left click on an existing table, go to Home and Format Painter, and after I click it, just left click on the new table and it'll copy everything over. One thing I want to add to this table is a title. So I'm going to this Format Your Visual, under General, turn on Title. And let's call this Current Animals. And make the text larger. Let's make another table for our requests. So we want our requested by creature, how many males, females, and total count. Using the same trick of left click the table to copy down the formatting. And now going to our table title. Let's call this New Requests. So you'll see some column names might be long, so you can go back and rename. You can also left click the column side and adjust the width that way. I'm going to rename this to just Total Requested. Or better yet, just say total. So now, what if we want to get a new count of current animals on hand plus the new request? How many animals will that location have that they will have to take care of now. So a location can put in multiple requests. If we try to create another table and join animals with requests, we could see multiple rows for each animal line where they have 2 or more requests, and we don't want to double up on data. So we will need to make a summarized table for all of our requests. So there's 1 record per location. Before we make our new table, I want to make a measure for the total count of males and females. So going to our requests. Now that I'm left-clicked into the table, the source name, I can see the ellipse, click on those 3 dots, and go to new measure. And for me to differentiate this better between the other columns, even though it will have a icon that looks like a calculator beside it, I'm still going to keep this called measure total males. This will be the sum of our males. Do it again, hover your mouse, left click, new measure. I want to do the same for females. From our Excel request, female. So now that we have our... Wait, so I called this total males and total females. For consistency, I will call that also total females. Okay. So now that we have our 2 measures, now we can prepare our total requests summary. So going up to modeling and new table. I'm going to call this table our requests summary or rec summary. I want to summarize our Excel request source based on our tag of the primary keys. Let's make a new column. It will be called total males. And this is based off of the measure of total males. Let's make another column called total females based off of the measure of our total females. And once you hit enter, you'll see the rec summary on the right hand side. We can go to our table view to review how does it show here. So if you want to double check your work, let's go to our original requests. And we can see, let's look at an example where somebody has more than 1 request. So Sarah Serpents, she has 2 total males, 2 plus 0, but then she also wants 5 total females. Looking at the 2 plus 3. So now going to our requests, we are looking for 2 and 5 for Sarah Serpents and leopard geckos. Sarah Serpents for leopard geckos, 2 and 5. So our summary is looking good. So let's look down at our rec summary And let's join our requests with the summary here, based off of our tag of primary keys, and hit save. And you can move these tiles around to whatever makes the most sense to you. Next, in our request summary, I would like to bring over the total count for those animals on hand that we have in our animals table. So on our rec summary, I want to add a new column. I'll just call it animal or anim, just for short. Lookup value. I want to look up from our SQL animals table the total count we have on hand. Searching by the tag in the animals table by using the tag that we have in our rec summary currently. Closing parentheses, and OK. So making a new table. In our new table, I'll bring in the location name and creature. And I'm able to do this because in our relationships, the rec summary is linked to Excel requests, and Excel requests is linked to SQL animals. So because of that chain, I can pull all the way from up here. Now from rec summary, let's add in our animals count. Now I'll rename this to count on hand. And so we don't have to, because I want to have the total count of all animals, not just male versus female. I'm going to add a new column in here. And I'll call this total female male count. So this will be from our rec summary total females plus rec summary total males. And I can either check the box beside that column name, or I can left click and drag. And finally, I can also add another column to represent our grand total. So grab our animals counts, or count from our animals table, plus I can either do the total females and males, or I can just grab the one column that we just created, the total female and male count. Enter. Bring that over. Let's copy the formatting. And let's give it a title name. Go to General, Title. This will be our new grand total. So actually, because we don't need as much space, we can change the width of our entire report So clicking on the background, I can now go to format your report page, canvas setting, change the type. Let's try 1,000. Let's see. Just kind of play around to see what do you think looks good. And as you are moving components around, you'll see red dotted lines to help you align with nearby objects. So you'll notice that we made this page for leopard geckos, but we have information for other animals such as a hognose snake or python. So you can either put a filter on each individual table, you can put a filter on one whole page, you can also put filters that will affect all of the pages. So if I left click on this first table, I can say let's filter on just hognose snakes. I just realized I was clicking on hognose snake the entire time. I should have done leopard geckos. There we go. This is making much more sense. That looks much better. So that's also showing where if you can have a filter on the whole page, that can make it much more easier to manage. So to do that, I can go to our animals table, going to creature, and because I'm going to have different tabs for different animals, I'm going to put it only on this filters on this page section versus the filters on all pages. So left click and drag it over, and let's focus on leopard geckos. And now the entire page is filtered on just that leopard gecko. Now depending on your data, and if you have information in one field or one table and not the other, that can affect your filtering. So let's make a second quick example. So I'm actually going to delete this, and I want to duplicate this. And let's make a page for our hognose snake. So for hognose snakes, I am going to reference another web page. So let's quickly put in the source for that. I'm going to pull from, because I might mispronounce the name, the racinezoo.org. So I will call this web hognose. So I'm just going to click in this table, remove what was previously there, pop this in, categories, details, add in a new image of a precious little hognose snake. So cute. Let's see, let's adjust the width of this table, or sorry, this column here, so it doesn't take up as much space. So now, currently, there are no filters on this page, But now what if... Actually, that's already from SQL Animals, yes. Oh, another thing, to see these different columns listed here, if you have a column that's named the same in multiple sources, if you don't remember which source that column came from specifically, just hover your mouse over it and it'll show you this came from our SQL Animals source. So if I go on that drop down, Cognos. There we go, and we can double check our work. So from our animals table, it's showing Harry's Hogs has 12 total counts, or 12 total snakes on hand. 6 are for sale. Let's go to our table view. Focusing on animals. Harry's Hogs, they had 12 counts, 6 ready for sale. So this is correct. Let's review our requests. So double check, Harry's Hogs has 5 males and 5 females being requested for 10 total. Table view. Now let's go to our requests. So Harry put in 2 different requests. So one has 3 males, 3 females. The second request has 2 males, 2 females. So grand total of 5 males, 5 females. So our summary is correct. And finally, going down to our new grand total. Total count on hand is that same 12 up here. Total female male count being requested is that 10 right there. 12 plus 10 is 22. So all of our information is correct. So now let's just try to see if we can break it a bit, see what we can do where things won't look right. I also realized I did not rename this. Cognos Snake. There we go. I'll just call this review. Get rid of that. So take off the filter from this page. So one thing that we can try doing is looking at all of our sources. Are there any animals that we see we cannot filter on? So I can see hognose snake and gecko, and then we have a weird blank. And looking over, I see we actually have a request for python, for 1 male python by Ruby's Reptiles. Also going down to our grand total, we can see our location and creature is blank, but we have some kind of request coming in from somewhere. We don't know where, don't know what creature, but we have a request for an animal. And this is where it is helpful to have some of the other sources in front of you as well. And don't forget where you do not need a filter or a traditional filter to filter on data in Power BI. I can left click on this row and it will filter the other tables. So our creature location and creature, these were columns that we pulled from our animals table, but because this record, because Ruby's Reptiles doesn't have a Python record in the animals table yet, that is why this is blank. So being able to select in tables can help you troubleshoot to see why do you see blanks or why does information seem to look wrong. But with that, now you have a couple of tabs ready to show the count on hand for your leopard gecko and hognose snake, and you can continue to build this report for the different animals that you care for. For additional formatting tips, you can rearrange the order of how visuals appear on your report, and that can be helpful where if you want, let's add a background behind this leopard gecko. We can go to Insert, New Shape, and let's put this right about here. Let's change the style. But because we put the picture there first, well, now this shape is blocking the image. So if you want to rearrange the order that objects appear, go to View, go to Selection, and now this section will show your different objects you have on this page and the order. You can also click on the eyeball looking icon to make things appear and disappear. So I can left click on shape and I can see the border appeared around that shape, and I can move this as far down as I want to. So actually this image should be our leopard gecko, and it is. So as long as the shape goes behind the image, we are in business. I can adjust this, make it look nice. You can also rename the items in here too. So I can click on the image here and I can say gecko picture. For shape, I can say picture border. And also, I know I have multiple tables going on. So if it doesn't have a title already, like this table from the webpage, it'll just say table. So I can call this, from our web, gecko source. If you do have a Power BI license, you can import additional visuals by clicking on the 3-dot ellipse at the bottom. I'm currently working on a free version using Power BI Desktop, but if you're able to click on the ellipse, you would get a pop-up window where you can search for, let's say, honestly, the text filter. Text filter is very common. And another favorite I like to use is, I think it's pronounced chiclet slicer, and that'll give you what looks like multiple buttons on how to filter your information. And just continuing to play around with what we can do in Power BI. I'm going to treat this last page as, let's just call it like a dev environment. It's like a sandbox. So playing around with some other items that we have here, I can add a slicer. And let's say I can put in the creature. So copying over the formatting from the table, it affected the background. It no longer has a background color. And I wasn't quite a fan of how that turned out, so I'm going to turn that back on. I can give it a title. I can say, just call it creature here. And the title is different than the header that you see here. And honestly, because I can make the title centered, look nice, format it, I like to make the header go away. It just looks nicer. Here's one example of a slicer that you can simply click on and filter the information. And also, as you hide these sections to the right, it can make it easier to review your information that way. And notice with this particular slicer, I can only check one box at a time currently, but if I am currently selected in that slicer, go to Format Your Visual, go to Visual, and under Slicer Settings, you'll see a multi-select with control. I want to turn that off. So now I can just left click and it'll let me select more than one box at a time. I can create a copy of a table, paste to the side, and while selected in that new table, I can turn it into a pie chart. I can turn it into different visuals. And I can adjust the information such as a legend, requested by, I think it's fine. I can do requested by, values. I'm actually going to change this up. Values being total requested. And this is actually breaking up here because Ruby's Reptiles has 2 requests coming in. So maybe instead of doing the requested by as a legend, let's use the tag where it's both the creature and the requested by. And I can take away the title. I can change the colors of the pie. Move where the legend is located. I can change the detail labels to either be inside of the visual, outside. So this is helpful where you can just take a copy of an existing table and just turn it into a visual very easily. We can make multiple versions of this visual. So maybe if I want to focus on the specific creature, I can more easily see leopard geckos versus hognose snakes versus python. Or what if I click on this and change it to a decomposition tree? And you can be able to expand it that way as well. This is more helpful with like tracking dollar amounts versus counts. But just to show you the different kinds of visuals that can be available in just the free version of Power BI. And there's so much more. So I think this is a great start, a great introduction to getting into Power BI. If you do have a Power BI license and you were able to import a report into a workspace online, you can either go into that workspace and import it that way, or you can also hit the publish button in the home tab. And if you enter in the workspace it should be imported into, you will see a pop-up saying this report already exists. Do you want to override it? And you can say yes, and that can be a much easier way to republish a existing report. So you can edit the report on your desktop, and then only when it's ready, then publish it for other people to use. And finally, one last note is if you wish to refresh the data in your report, if you want to refresh only specific pieces, you can go to your data section on the far right, click on the ellipse, and go to refresh data, and that will refresh just that one piece. Or on the home tab, you can click on refresh here. And your information will be refreshed. One quick small side note is if your table, if your source has, let's say, a timestamp, you can add in a card onto your Power BI and say to put in the timestamp from there, so people can know what is the latest data inside this report. Yes, I would say latest timestamp, and just going under visual, call out values, adjusting the size there. And it's just nice to keep in the corner somewhere. To see changes made to your core data, you can go to transform data again. And as you go between the different sources here, you can see a list of applied steps, and this would show things like if you renamed columns here or changed the data type. And if later on you decide one of the steps was no longer needed, you can click on this X to remove that step. And when you are done working on this page, go up to close and apply, and click on close and apply again. And that will make any changes official. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video to be helpful and wish to spot me a coffee sometime, you can leave a one-time tip or donation at ko-fi.com/VeeBee coding, which is always appreciated. If you have a scenario in mind, feel free to forward them to me at askveebcoding@gmail.com, and I'll consider them for future videos. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you again for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.